concentrating on today is Rabbi Emden, also known as 97. It's a German rabbi. He was a great Gemara Talmudist in of itself. He championed, let's just say, traditional Judaism, especially at that point in time, fought against the Sabbatean movement. And we spoke about that very much inside the video of the Chacham Tzvi, a great rabbi we spoke about only a few weeks ago in this series. He was the son of the Chacham Tzvi. He was widely acclaimed for his brilliant and, let's say, extensive knowledge. He was actually born in Altona, I think, which is modern-day Hamburg. At that point in time, was part of the Roman Empire, and he was a great rabbi of his time. Let's explore a few of the highlights of the great rabbi's life. First of all, we'll say that he actually came from great heritage. We said that Chacham Tzvi Ashkenazi was his father. It's also reported over he was a descendant of Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem of Chelm. Very interesting enough. Great rabbis. So I would recommend everyone to look back at the video we did of Chacham Tzvi only 2 weeks ago. He would spend the vast majority of his life in Altona, which is obviously now part of Hamburg in Germany. His son, Rav Mishul Solomon, would go on to serve as a rabbi of the Hamburg Synagogue in London, and was a chief rabbi of the United Kingdom between the years 1765 to 1780. Remember, we've learned already in this series about most Spanish Portuguese chief rabbis of England, so over here is that opportunity to see a family heritage with regards to that. Now it's interesting, the acronym Yavetz is formed from his Hebrew name, obviously with the title first rabbi, then Yakov ben Z'tl, naturally. And let's explore a few of the highlights of the great rabbi's life. Now, he was born obviously in Ashkenaz territory. Remember, his father, Rabbi Tzvi Ashkenazi, the Chacham Tzvi, had a lot of connections in regards to the Sephardi community, especially Amsterdam, in London, and all over the place. He actually went by the title Chacham, usually giving the, let's say, the more Spanish title in itself. Now, Rabbi Yakov Emden was the fifth of Rabbi Chacham Tzvi's 15 children. Very interesting enough. Until the age of 17 years old, he would study Gemara under his father's auspices, Rav Tzvi Ashkenazi. He was obviously at that point in time, let's say, a leading rabbinic authority in various different places. We learned about the whole time period, especially his time in Amsterdam, in previous videos of other rabbis. First, he would learn in Altona, and then later on in Amsterdam. I think Amsterdam between years 1710 to 1714. Now, come what the year 1715, he would get married to his wife Rachel, become Rabbinit Rachel. She happened to be the daughter of Rav Mordechai ben Naftali Kohen, who was, I think, the rabbi of, I hope I pronounce this correctly, Angarish Abroad, this area called Moravia, I think part of the Czech Republic, obviously earlier stages in Czechoslovakia. And he would continue studying his studies in his father-in-law's yeshiva. Now, it's actually interesting, Rabbi Yakov Emden would master all the branches of Gemara in of itself, and Torah, and later expanded studies with philosophy, with Kabbalah, and he was a grammarian. He was an expert in grammar. Even he learned various languages, including Dutch, obviously spending time in Holland, the Netherlands, and also Latin. And he had a view that secular studies should be limited to periods when Torah study was not feasible. So ideally, in the ideal world, just to primarily spend all the time studying. He would spend 3 years in this Ungarish broad place in the Czech Republic, being a Gemara teacher over there. And he would take up work, a dealer in jewellery and other goods. He would work in various different extensive trades. I think generally he declined a formal rabbinic position at the start, but I think in the year 1728 he accepted the rabbinate of Amdin, from which he later derived his name. Naturally, that's what he's probably known as. He eventually returned to Altona, where he received permission from the Jewish community over there to establish a private synagogue. Now, early on, he had great relations, as I say, with the famous Rabbi Moshe Hagiz, who was a head of the Portuguese Jewish community, rabbi we've spoken about on this series, before one of the great rabbis of the time. And I think later on, I think they sort of lost the strong communication they had. He had positive relations with other Jewish communities, especially with the chief rabbi of Germany at the time, the community. Okay, sorry about that, the connection went over there. Okay, so in 1747 he would publish a siddur called Amudei Shemayim, which would have the Polish minhag with regards to it. I think he would receive an approbation from the Landers Rabbiner, reported over, but some people would not have necessarily supported that at that point in time. Now the Yavet's pen name, in the preface to his work, The Response of the Yavetz, Rav Emden recounts how as a child he questioned why his father signed only a Tzvi, rather than also including his father's name, as was normal thing at that point in time. His father explained that this was a homonym, Tzvi, an acronym, let's just say, for his full name, Tzvi ben Yaakov. So he advised that Rav Emden should take the pen name Yavetz under the same principles. So the Hebrew name Yavetz appears both as a place name, I think in the book of Chronicles, and in chapter 2 and in chapter number 4 respectively. Okay, now there was obviously the whole thing. He was a staunch criticizer of the Sabbatean movement and really warned the people against the heresy that was taking place at that point in time. So that I would leave for you to research in a separate video that we've actually covered a lot in recent times. But in the year 1756, there was members of the Starkostiantiv, I think, in the Volhynian voivodeship, I think it's western part of Ukraine, requested that Rav Emden aid them in, let's say, fighting against the Sabbatinians and the Frankists at that point in time. Remember, we just mentioned that he really did a huge amount of work to warn everyone with regards to the Sabbatean movement. Rav Emden thought it was wise to examine, let's say, I think the Sabbateans referred much to the Zohar, and Rav Emden would examine the book and study it, and concluded that a significant part of the Zohar was a production of an impostor over here. Now, it's actually interesting. Rabbi Yakov Emden's work showed critical powers really found among his contemporaries. He was very strictly orthodox. He didn't deviate from the tradition at all, even when the difference in time and circumstance, maybe some might have argued that they could do. Rabbi Emden's opinions, let's just say, were often viewed obviously strictly traditional, mainstream in of itself. He was initially had friendly relations, or I don't know, possibly the whole of his life, a connection to Moses Mendelssohn, who obviously he would become the head of other branches of Judaism, who he actually would become the founder of Haskalah at a later time. And he had interfaith, also with other scholars in of itself. So he was well known, but he was very strictly orthodox. Now, Rav Emden was a traditionalist who responded to the ideals of tolerance being circulated during the 18th century of Enlightenment. And like Maimonides, he would believe that monotheistic faiths have an important role to play in humankind, in humanity as a whole in of itself. Rav Emden, so he would have relations, interfaith relations with other places. Rav Emden was also seen as a nuanced figure who navigated tension between rabbinic and external historical sources. Rav Emden tempered the exclusionist approach of scholars like Rav Aviad Sar Shalom Basilia and the Rabbi we've spoken about on various occasions. We actually mentioned him just quite recently in that book, which we spoke about him. Who, let's just say, who outright himself rejected non-rabbinic sources by cautiously engaging with historical claims. For example, in addressing contradictions between Talmud and historical accounts, Rav Emden sometimes reinterpreted rabbinic texts to align with the external evidence as seen with regards to the Talmudic story of Nero, his conversation. He also critiqued, there was a rabbi, was the name Rabbi Azariah di Rossi. I think someone we spoke about on various occasions before, Rabbi di Rossi was, for uncritically accepting non-Jewish sources. This was something that we mentioned also before, which we have to point out. And to actually approach more of them, he had like an approach that reflected, let's just say, a balance between preserving the authority of rabbinic literature and cautiously let's say, integrating external historical insights. That's another very interesting thing about him. He was a moderate voice, let's just say, when it came in the debate over historicity and rabbinic claims. Now, let's explore. He had like a lot of great Torah works also. A lot of it was jointly attributed to him and his father. Let's see, the Edut Yaakov, what was that, friends? That was actually printed in Hamburg in the year 1756. It addresses, let's say, with a letter of the Igret Shum to the rabbis of the Four Lands. Then there was a Shimush that was printed in the year 1758 in Amsterdam, I think till 1762, which was 3 works, a Shut Lasus, Metek Lehamor, and the Shevet Legav Kisilim. Another great work was the Shivrat Luchot Ha'aven. This was a refutation of the Luchot Eidut. Then there was Sechot HaKasil of Yaakov Zeb, and I think they were 3 polemical works published from one of his pupils, and the Mitpacheh Sfarim, which printed in Altona between the year 1761 to the year 1768, was in two parts. A compilation, let's say the first demonstrates the Zohar, its later compilation, and second criticizes works such as Emunat Chachamim and the Mishnat Chachamim as other polemic letters. The Herev Pifiot, which was Igeret on Purim, Teshuvot Aminim and Zichron Siddur. The Lechem Shemayim, which was printed in Altona in the year 1728, which commentary of the Mishnah with treatise of the Maimonides, Mishnah Torah. The Igeret Bikoret was printed in Altona in the year 1733 also, and the Sheilot Yavetz, which is in the year 1739. Then there was a Siddur Tfilah, which we spoke about, we just mentioned on the outside. That was printed between 1745 to 1748. It was a prayer book in of itself, contains parts of the Even Bochan and a critique of Menachem Lonzano's Avodat Mikdash. Then the Ed Savot, which was printed in Amsterdam in the year 1751, was commentary on Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Father's book, the Mishnah, respectively. This was another very interesting thing. So you can see like the wide range. In the Shagat Ariyah, famous book, in Amsterdam in the year 1755, it was a eulogy for his brother-in-law, Rabbi Aryeh Lehi ben Shaul, who happened to be the rabbi of Amsterdam. Also included the Kishurim Yaakov, respectively. Then the Seder Olam Rabbah and Seder Olam Z'tl, which printed in Hamburg in the year 1757. It was texts of, let's just say, the Seder Olam and the Megillat Ta'anit, respectively. And the Mor Oketzia, this was once again in Atlon in the year 1777, actually, which was a novel on the Orach Chaim, respectively, with additional novel on Yeridea Aben Ezer and Choshen HaMishpat, also respectively. The Mor Oketzia, once again in Altona in the year 1777. Then there was other great Torah works. You can see like the wealth bank of different Torah books that actually came from the great rabbi over here. There was, just to conclude, the Shemesh Sitka, the Pesach Gadol, the Sharei Azara, another great Torah work, the Kishurim Yaakov, and there was notes on the Emet Yaakov, which was, I think, printed later on in Kiryat Joel. A lot of these books were published later on, and there was more books. I haven't included all of them. There was unpublished rabbinical writings, including Tzadkat Damim, a refutation of the blood libel in Poland, the Hilkata LeMishcha, response to Rav Israel Lipschitz, and there was more works. The Shar Shemaim we spoke about later on. I think in 1994, another Siddur will be printed within regards to that, which is very, very interesting enough. So friends, we're a community here. We are learning at the moment about the great rabbis of yesteryear. We spoke about Rabbi Yakov Emden. Please subscribe to the channel. If you feel anyone's interested in watching these videos, share these videos to other people also. And if you haven't subscribed yourself, please subscribe now to the channel. We're growing very, very fast and quickly and making fantastic progress at the moment. So thank you very much. Have a great day here live in the holy city of Jerusalem.